episode of the Big O Podcast. I am your host, Julian Ortiz, and today I am joined by a very special guest, former host of The Footy Show on The Score, former play-by-play commentator for One Soccer, and someone who once self-proclaimed himself the Stephen A. Smith of his own home during the quarantine, Brendan Dunlop. Brendan, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Did I actually say that? I've said a lot of things over the last 10 months. That's one that actually slipped my mind.
That is one. You said your household is like First Take and you are Stephen A. Smith and your poor dog just had to listen to your takes. This is during when we had no sport, so maybe that's changed a little bit since then.
No, he's listened to a lot of takes, man. He's listened to a lot of unwanted takes. He's watched so much like midweek Serie A. I look like I should be coaching in the Serie A right now, the way the flow has grown. I'm kind of looking like Tommy Wheeldon Jr., head coach of Cavalry in the CPL right now. So, yeah, it's been a long quarantine, bro.
You got this whole Pirlo vibe going on, and I absolutely love it. I'm not going to lie.
I wish that my game had a Pirlo vibe, though. It does not have a Pirlo vibe at all. Not at all.
And I want to go back. I mean, obviously, said Stephen A. Smith because of all the takes, but I got to ask you, if your dog had to be one of either Skip Bayless or Max Kellerman, which one is he best related to?
No, he's definitely Max. He's okay. He's a German Shepherd, so he looks like his name could be Max, to be honest. I feel like that's probably the most popular German Shepherd name in the Western world. Has got to be Max. So he looks like it could be a Max, but also like Max has some really likable qualities. And even when he's putting it on, you're like, take it easy, Max. He's still likable. That's never the case with Skip, right? So my dog eats Skippy peanut butter. That's as far as it goes.
So he eats Skip for breakfast.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. It was actually interesting. There's an article came out today from the New York Times, I think it was, and Skip Bayless re-ups for a 32 mil new contract with First Take. However, apparently Stephen A. Smith was working with ESPN to try to get Skip to come back. What would you think? One, if you're Max Kellerman right now, like what are you thinking when your current co-host is trying to oust you for the guy you replaced? And two, do you think the world wants that again, or have we kind of moved on from that sort of show?
Yeah, it's funny, man. I mean, I do feel like that the world has moved on, but I can see how, and media in general, it was in such a strange place before the pandemic. So I can absolutely see why for Stephen A. Smith, someone who's been hugely successful, someone who I still feel like enjoys his job, sees a security and an appeal in the nostalgia of that. So I think for him, he sees, look, if I could get back with Skip, that gives me another 3 years. There's for as tight as the big companies can be with money, they spend money on things they really want. And I think that he's always had an appeal. That show has never really been the same since Skip left for whatever they call the show with Shannon, which sounds like First Take, but it's not.
That's right.
Before the First Take, whatever it's called. The show that loses out to The Price is Right and reruns of MASH, whatever that show is called on Fox. I can see why Stephen A's like, yo, Disney, like, let's bring this back. Let's run it back so we can run it for 3 more years. But at the same time, too, I could see why Disney's not about to write that big check. So if I'm Max, I feel a little cheese, but I think from the business side, I understand it. I'm sure Max does. But Stephen A., I think it's strange to want to pull that back. I can see him liking the nostalgia, but me personally, I had enough of the two of them together, and I'm happy with Skip not in the picture.
I think this has to be, if I'm Max, I'm thinking Stephen A's intimidated by me because I loved, when Skip was doing his thing with Stephen A, and I'm just a big fan of Max Kellerman to begin with. And I love the fact that Kellerman goes toe-to-toe, to use like a boxing analogy right up Max's alley. He goes toe-to-toe with Stephen A, and sure, he has some outrageous and outlandish comments, but he never seems arrogant. Maybe that's a bad word, but I mean, when Skip and Steven are going toe to toe, it's no one's listening to each other. It's who can bark the loudest. And I think we moved past that. I think we moved past where we want a little bit more education and entertainment, or as Tim and Sid say, edutainment.
Edutainment, yeah. It is a great term.
And so I love Max, but I can't imagine what he's feeling right now, especially when, Stephen A might have been leading the charge. But you know what? Good for them. They get paid tons of money to do whatever it is that they do, and they're great at it. But just I thought it was interesting. You know, we were talking about First Take a little bit, that that news comes out this week. Now, speaking of looking for the next opportunity, we were talking just before the podcast. You know, you did start at the Score, and you've moved on up. I mean, you've worked at Sportsnet, One Soccer. You've done stuff with Fox. You've done a bunch of amazing things, and now you find yourself in a unique situation where you are this free agent, and we're trying to figure out, you know, what's the most relatable free agent that we can think of. And you know, you came up with Cam Newton. As a Patriots fan, I give you more credit than what we got out of Cam Newton, so I hope not. You know, out of the NFL quarterbacks, because I'm gonna put you in that tier. You're in that top echelon of guys looking for a job that is talented enough to get it. We're just waiting on the right offer. Who might be someone that you would say, okay, I am the blank of the NFL?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. Thank you very much for putting me in that tier, for starters.
Of course.
I haven't had, the devastating injury like Alex Smith, so I don't think I'm quite there. I've never quite had the athletic flair of Cam Newton, but I think that sometimes my fashion has been as questioned as his. So that's kind of where I see it. I think a lot of people that think like, doubt him because of his age, like, oh, those grays are coming in. Maybe there's some of that. So I think that was the relation to Cam Newton there. That, oh, he's just a one-trick guy. He can only be the athletic mobile quarterback. He's not the thrower that he once was. I feel like sometimes I fit into the soccer box very easily, and they don't see that there's more to what I bring. So I've always had passion for other sports, and to be on the central desk for as long as I was and kind of cover all sports, that ticked all the boxes for me. As a fan and as a kid growing up, always wanted to kind of be in that seat. So I do love soccer. It's my baby. It's my passion, and I'd like to get into something where I can do a bit more of that than I was doing before. But it doesn't have to be soccer exclusive.
And so it's funny you say that. One, people forget Cam Newton was an MVP. So at one point he was at the top of the game. He's made it to a Super Bowl. So I mean, I get the comparison there. You're at the top there, but it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people would put you into that soccer box. But yeah, you did amazing things when it came to hosting. You're more of a night owl. You did a lot of the early morning stuff, late, I say like midnight to 4 a.m. on Sportsnet, covering the desk, not only recapping, but also breaking down all of the games. What was that like when you moved on from the Score after it got bought out, find your way to Sportsnet eventually, and find yourself doing something that you wanted to do, but was a little bit different than what you may have been accustomed to doing?
Yeah, the desk job was always the dream. I watched Michael Landsberg on Sports Desk. That Sports Center desk was always the pinnacle. So I was really fortunate to start working with Kristen Jack and James Sharman on the Footy Show. First, I worked with them on radio. I hosted the show on the Sirius satellite radio station we had at the time called Hardcore Soccer Talk. I think eventually we changed the name to the Hardcore Footy Show. Did that with them for probably about a year before they let me slide in on the TV side. I was the interactive guy, kind of the Twitter guy on the Footy Show, and then part of a three-prong of us there. And so just before the Score sale, actually, Fox had partnered with Sportsnet to do this soccer show, which was essentially, a Sports Center style show exclusively for soccer from Toronto for the Fox soccer audience in Canada and in the States and throughout CONMEBOL. Essentially, it was all of CONMEBOL. So that was a once in a lifetime opportunity, man, to do that style show, which I always envisioned doing, and to just do soccer exclusively. There's not too many people on this continent that are fortunate enough to work exclusively in soccer. So it was a dream come true, which unfortunately was cut short because of the changeover of rights, which is normal part of the business. Fox had held the Premier League rights for quite a few years up until that point, at least 6 years, I think, 2 contracts. And then NBC had come in and changed the game up, considerably. NBC's done a great job in the States with their Premier League coverage as well, but that definitely changed the tide for Fox at that time, and changed the tide for me when I started doing Sportsnet Central, which was the exact same style of show that I'd been doing for a year and a half at Fox, but it was all sports, and hockey obviously being the lead in this country. But it was cool to be a part of some really cool moments that weren't necessarily hockey. I was on the night the Raptors won the NBA championship. That game was on the other network at the time, but we were up, post game immediately after with all the post game coverage. We had somebody in the streets. We were doing all the street shots, and it was like everybody else wherever you were watching. I was the same way. I just happened to be on TV throwing the Nick Nurse sound bites and trying to get this and that in the show. So I experienced the parade in a much different way, but still still was able to enjoy it as recognize the moment. I don't want to say enjoy it as a fan because it was different, but to recognize the moment and really soak it up because it was a kind of a once in a lifetime thing.
And that's a hard thing, right? Like, you are a fan of sports, but you also have a job to do. And so you get to enjoy the few minutes and maybe share a little bit about it while you're throwing to clips and throwing to highlights. But it's, you got to have the laser focus to get back and do your job, essentially. What stands out to you outside of anything soccer related, which we'll get to in just a little bit, but what it stands out to you as your favorite sporting moment, to this point?
Having worked,
either covered or just in general, something that you'll always remember, when it happened.
Yeah, definitely the Raptors winning the title. I'll always remember that game 6, because I wasn't working game 5. And which would have been a totally different night for me. Had Lowry sunk that shot, I would have been out in the streets. I wouldn't have been in the studio that night. So that would have changed that whole moment completely for me.
Right.
I was, as a fan, I was able to go to France to watch Portugal beat France in the Euro 2016 final, which was incredible. My mother's Portuguese, so that's always been my footballing allegiance. And just getting to the final was a win. Me physically getting to the final was a win because it was incredible. I was in Paris for 25 hours. I felt like Drake. It was, wow. I scored the seats. The UEFA did like a final release of tickets so that they could actually get specific, team specific fans in, but it was quite a small batch of tickets. It was like a lottery. So I'd gone to the Jays game the night before with my cousin, had a few beers, and why don't we try and wake up at 6:00 and score these tickets? So by the time we leave the bar, I go home. I blasted every person that I knew that lived elsewhere because I thought my odds were bigger if I was not trying to buy these tickets from Canada. So friends in Australia, distant friends in England, somebody in Portugal, some relative that lived in Holland. Everybody I had blasted. Hey, can you try and log on and up to 2,000 euros? Just buy the tickets and I'll send you the money immediately. And sure enough, I sleep through this 6:00 wake up call. The phone rings at 8:00 and it's my cousin. Look at it. Hey man, sorry. Do I get 2 or do I get 4?
Oh what? My God.
Do I get 2 or do I get 4 tickets? So he'd scored 4 tickets. So we went with his dad and his dad's brother-in-law. And it was an amazing once in a lifetime trip, man. We left Saturday night on the red eye, landed there at 1:00. The match was at 6, night in the hotel. And we were back at the airport at 11 a.m. to come home.
What happens if you have multiple people who find a way to get tickets and you end up with like 16 tickets? What are you going to do at this point?
I'd still be paying for it. I would have been broke. Yeah, it would have been tough because they're actually hard tickets. So my thought was with the 4 tickets, it was like, well, if we didn't bring dad and brother-in-law, we could sell the 2 tickets, but they're hard tickets. So you're standing on the street. People know you got tickets. It's in a city I've never been to before. And, I hear that the Paris has its bad corners. So I'm like, I don't think I want to be trying to hike, $2,000 worth of tickets on the street. That's not my game. That's never been my jam. So I'm really glad we got to use the tickets, and I'm really glad that nobody else scored seats as well. So I wasn't out on anybody. Yeah.
That is amazing. All good night starts with a couple beers at a Blue Jays game, right?
There you go. Blue Jays and the Tigers. And that was always I walked an interesting line. You mentioned, being a fan and putting that aside to be professional. Obviously, I worked for the company that owned the Blue Jays. But I grew up in Windsor, and my love of baseball is because of the Detroit Tigers. My love of broadcasting is because of the Detroit Tigers. And Ernie Harwell was the voice on the radio I used to fall asleep to forever. That's the reason that I love baseball. And baseball was, one of my first loves, to be honest, for quite a few years before soccer really became accessible. Baseball was my absolute first love. That was the stats that I got into. That was how I started playing fantasy sports. Probably I may have played fantasy hockey in the newspaper. To talk about way back. This is you used to mail it in. You'd fill it out like a crossword, you'd mail it in, and you'd pay. And it was something crazy. Like you'd pay like $70 a year to get kind of 3 updated statements in the mail of like who you'd picked. So I think we did hockey and baseball. I remember that. So yeah, so wild, man, wild. So yeah, the walking the line of liking the Tigers. If you listen to a lot of my highlight packs, you can definitely hear when I'm picking on the Tigers, because there were some bad years, man. When I was sitting on my desk, like they were bad. After that year, they got swept in the DS. It wasn't the Rays. It might have been the Orioles, but they had Price, Scherzer, and Verlander back to back, and they got swept. And that was the end of it. So after that, you definitely hear me taking a few shots at the Tigers because I was pained just doing the highlight packs of them losing.
It's funny, those 3 guys all go on to win World Series championships with the teams that they moved on from. Price wins with the Red Sox, wins another ring with the Dodgers, even though he wasn't really there. Verlander goes to Houston. He wins a ring. Scherzer finally gets one with Washington. It's such a Detroit thing to think about. You have these 3 generational talents. You're not able to make it work. But if you look at the way the Detroit Tigers are built right now, there's a lot of optimism. They've got a lot of young prospects coming up. Casey Miz made his debut last year. He's hopefully poised to take on a bigger role this year. They've got Skubal as well. Torkelson, I believe, is one of their positional prospects that I think just got injured, but is supposed to still be okay to make it his debut, hopefully this year. A lot to be excited for in Detroit. Yeah. Do you still follow baseball as much as you did back then? And if so, what are you most excited about for your Detroit Tigers?
I think just to not have the season end in April would be great, to know you've got a chance to kind of still be in there. Even this past year in the shortened season, I thought that maybe they had a chance, because you get hot. If you win 10 of 12 games, all of a sudden you're in a completely different situation. I think they had that happen once where they might have won like 8 of 10, and it looked for a minute like, oh, they could flirt with the Central. So they were in it a little longer. If over the course of a full season, they probably would have been in it until the equivalent of just after the All-Star break. So I would love that again. If they were just, in contention, flirting with it around the All-Star break, that would be great. And, it really is a shame that they weren't able to get Miguel Cabrera a ring. Maybe they could, catch lightning in a bottle and get lucky and, get 60 games out of him. Who knows, what he may have left in the tank. He's not going to quit until he gets dragged away. Right. So I think that, they've got a good thing going right now. They might still be, 2 years away from being 2 years away. But it's wild times right now. And who knows, not having full stadiums, not being able to play the consistent schedule that these guys are used to. That's a totally different ballgame. That changes things up. If there's postponements, if there's COVID breaks, there's COVID outbreaks throughout the team, like that really changes the whole flow of a season. It makes it different where really anything can happen. So, except beating the Dodgers. Anything could happen except beating the Dodgers.
That's. I mean, baseball was interesting because hockey and basketball had already started, so they went into their bubble towards the end of the season. But they had already started playing games. Baseball started, stopped, started again, stopped, and then had to come to what seemed like another collective agreement. Yeah. In order to return back to baseball. And then you have uncertainty about games being played. You have all of these fun new rules like expanded playoffs, 7-inning doubleheaders, the no minor league system, but you can have basically like a taxi squad at your, local minor league system, and you can bring them in. And you get teams like the Miami Marlins, who, if I'm Major League Baseball, is praying to God that they don't beat one of our marquee teams and find their way into the World Series, because that's not what they needed in a shortened season. But I'm excited to get back to the fact that fans are going to be in the stands again in most markets. Obviously, Toronto may not have a team yet again, even in its country, but they're going to play out of Dunedin, and then we'll see if it's Buffalo or somewhere else. But I think fans getting back into sports is going to be the biggest game changer. We've seen it already with basketball a little bit. I think they're making their way with hockey. But if there's one sport that is going to be able to survive without fans, because from time to time, depending on the hooliganism, they're sometimes barred from attending games, is soccer. However, what do you think the impact of no fans for the 2020 Euro Cup in 2021 would be if there were no fans able to attend?
Yeah, I mean, Euro 2020 plus one is what I've been calling it.
I like
If
that.
they do, it was crazy before the pandemic. It was crazy to think that they could do this tournament across 12 countries, 16 cities, I think was how logistically they were trying to do it. And obviously, it's all driven by money. And I just think that seemed like such a risk to begin with. It seemed difficult for the fan. It seemed not ideal for any of these teams, to be honest, especially teams that are going to go far in this tournament. I felt it as though it would have a negative effect on the quality of play. If they do, I know England's been pushing for it hard. I don't know if it's actually come through yet that England's going to host it exclusively. If they do, and Boris gets his wish to open the entire country, open the entire kingdom in the middle of June, then that'll totally change it. Having fans in the stands really does change the. It really does, I think, have the biggest impact on the actual gameplay. You look at Project Restart, and you look at now, and in kind of all of Europe's top club leagues, and you can really see that in the Bundesliga when they first came back. It wasn't that these players weren't fit. These players were not ready for the consistency of play. There was so fewer breaks. And it was, I'm not going to attack officials and say it's they're influenced by the crowd, this, that, whatever, but it's just a natural, I think, human instinct to
Sure.
feel the effects of the crowd and be swayed a little bit. And there was just far fewer stoppages. So the actual gameplay was much higher. It took a couple of weeks for these guys, I think, to adjust to that. You look in England, I thought you were going to ask me what would be the impact of having fans back or not having fans. What was the biggest impact? Just look at the table. In a lot of ways, I don't think Aston Villa stay up if they had played an entire full season, a normal season, without the interruption of the pandemic. If there's fans in the stands, home and away, it just had such a big impact on that team. And in a lot of situations, I think you can put it down to that they were just nervous. They didn't trust themselves. They seemed so lost and shaken and affected. And that was not the case at all when they were playing in these closed stadiums, fighting for their lives. And, obviously I'm biased being an Aston Villa fan. They did stay up by just one goal. But I truly believe that if the coronavirus pandemic hadn't interrupted the game, that they would have been relegated. I also think that Sheffield United wouldn't be in the position that they're in right now. You look at the incredible season they had before the pandemic. I think that was largely fueled by Bramall Lane and their traveling supporters and just what it's like to be there. There's some of these clubs get a real shot in the arm and a real boost when it's their first time up, especially with the absence that it's been for the Blades, 11 years or whatever it was before getting back to the Premier League. But they were shambolic after the restart, and they haven't been able to kind of play that level now. And I think that really, to pinpoint it, it's the removal of fans that has had the biggest impact on their fortune. I think it's unfortunate to see them go back down, but that looks like what they're destined to do. Although they did beat Villa the other day, so good on the Blades for getting that victory.
I mean, this season's been kind of topsy-turvy. If you look at the historic run Liverpool had this year or last year, and look what's happening right now. I mean, they just lost to my Chelsea squad 1-0, and it was sort of like the icing on the cake of like the worst 5-game stretch in their history of their club. And you look at Man City at the top of the table, which, always seems to happen every like 2 or 3 years. They just find their way to be the quiet team nobody thinks is going to be that great, and then all of a sudden they're destroying everybody at top of the league. What do you think has been the biggest surprise this year in the EPL, and what do you attribute that surprise to?
I mean, I do truly think that not having fans in the stands is why you have some teams punching above their weight. Not to say that Leicester kind of couldn't be there, but I just think that it's such a game changer across the board. It's so hard to pinpoint. I think which match days, which weekends, which fixtures it had a real impact in. But I don't believe that you have cities run away with it now. But up until a month ago, you're still looking at the table like mathematically this is a 4-horse race. And that's, I don't think West Ham's truly in it, but mathematically they're pushing for it.
Right.
A 6-point swing here or there for any of the teams above them or themselves. And you're talking about a legit race. So I think the biggest surprise to me was how unpredictable it's been. I think, having had a break, and it was such a short break between the season actually ending and starting again, but having had that break, a restart of a new season. They had a rushed, obviously, preseason, but blood a lot of new players in. It was still a very busy transfer market considering the state of the world. There was still a lot of movement overall. And you pull on the brand new kit manufacturer's shirt for that season, and you start a whole new season. What was 5 weeks ago is totally forgotten. And the fact that you have, I think, had as much parity and these shocking results that we still see, that to me is the biggest surprise, that the Premier League has been as wide open, as you may have expected for those 8 weeks in Project Restart, but it's continued.
Now, I want to stay with footy, but shift gears just a little bit. And, just recently, Jason Sudeikis took home the 2021 Golden Globe for lead actor in a comedy or musical series for his role as Ted Lasso in the self-titled Apple TV series. Have you seen the show? If so, what are your thoughts?
Bro, Ted Lasso is amazing. Honestly, I cannot
Incredible
believe.
show.
I never would have expected. I absolutely love Jason Sudeikis' portrayal of Ted Lasso in the NBC spots. The fact that he got another, the next year to do it again, and I forget, who was featured in it, but it was different. They recycled some of the same jokes. Obviously, it was the same theme, but I just thought it was impressive as all hell that NBC fronted the money or doubled the money to do this again, and then 7 years later for them to have a show is incredible. And not only to just have a show based on this character, but to have a show that is so deep, that is so transcending of the sport. I can't believe the people who I know are not soccer people and are telling me that they love Ted Lasso. I don't know what's crazier, the amount of people that are really into this show and now have given soccer a shot, or the fact that I finished watching each episode of Ted Lasso and I want to be a better person. Right. I don't understand how that's the case. It's made me think about certain friendships. It's made me reassess my priority of time, how I prioritize my days. It really is an incredible show. I'm glad that Jason Sudeikis has got the plaudits for it and rewarded with a couple of new seasons, right? Because it's not that often that a network gives you 2 more years off of one pandemic interrupted, hard to measure season. So good on them. It's a fantastic show.
And if you were to look at of all the sports that's gonna have this huge following, the 2 shows that sort of stand out the most are Cobra Kai, which has a built-in fan audience from those who loved the Karate Kid and those who followed the earlier seasons when it was on YouTube before it got to Netflix and really sort of skyrocketed. But Ted Lasso comes out of nowhere. The only thing that you really attribute to is Jason Sudeikis, and you can count on him to be hilarious, but he elevates almost everybody on screen and off screen, and it just becomes this phenomenon that, like you said, people who don't like soccer are watching, and they're telling their friends, and all of a sudden it's like the #1 show trending in the world. What do you think? And I wrote this down as a question. If you keep the same premise of the show intact, if you had to choose a coach or a manager that would have success in a different sport based on Ted Lasso, who would it be?
Ooh. I don't know if you've seen Next Goal Wins, the documentary about Thomas Rongen's time in American Samoa. That won several awards. I highly recommend that, not just because Thomas Rongen's a friend of mine, but the story is incredible. And that, him coaching American Samoa, statistically the worst international football team in the world. The story of that, his time there, his 3-month time there in their World Cup qualifying campaign, it really transcended sport. And much the same as Ted Lasso, a lot of people say you don't have to be, it is about soccer, but you do not have to be a soccer person, a football person to enjoy it. So given that, and the type of character that Thomas Rongen is, he's very much, he, in a lot of ways, he makes Ted Lasso look like a simple person. So consider that he's that much kind of bigger a character. You've just posed the question, if I could take Thomas Rongen and make him coach junior hockey, that would be something incredible. That would be a television show. That would be something absolutely out of this world. You could make a documentary of that. Put Thomas Rongen in Saskatchewan and make him chase a WHL title with Saskatoon. That was something that I would pay a lot of money for. Triple my Apple Plus subscription. So there you go. Apple, I've just given you an idea. Go find Thomas Rongen and put him in Saskatoon.
And you're going to sign an extended 3-year extension on your Apple TV membership. I love it.
There you go.
Absolutely love it. I think of a stoic coach. I think like a Bill Belichick. And I'm trying to think in my mind, because that's my coach. That's my guy. What would I like?
You think he'd be interesting enough, though, to be honest? In any other sport, you think he'd actually be interesting enough? You'd be curious. I understand the curiosity.
I'd be curious to see how his mind works, because like the entertainment value is going to be different. If I spoke to Ian Rappaport a couple episodes ago, and he said getting Bill Belichick one-on-one, he's a completely different person. Like, he has personality, he has fun, he is incredibly smart and loves to actually talk to people. But then he throws on like the stoicness in front of the media and says, we're on to Seattle, or he'll do his sort of thing. But I'd love to see his mind similar to like how Phil Jackson's mind worked when he was using the triangle offense in like the NBA. I want to see something that asks him to be creative. And I feel like, I don't know if it's basketball. I don't know if it would be hockey, and maybe it's baseball. I'd love to see him situationally like break down like the sabermetrics, even though he's like not a numbers guy like whatsoever. But I think
would he be pulling his star pitcher after 73 pitches though? Ooh. I feel like that might be, or maybe he would go the opposite and he let him throw 203 pitches, and it would just like run the guy into the ground. Like a Japanese high school baseball coach. Just, he can throw 500. Just let him go.
That's actually a great point. I mean, okay, I'm gonna take what you said, and I'm gonna take Kevin Cash, and I'm gonna say, what sport would he be best in?
Oh, I mean, that's a good one.
I think I was gonna say football, because he'll get like the quarterback to throw 75 times in a game, or he would let Drew Brees only throw 5 times, and then like Taysom Hill comes in and he throws the next 35 to protect the arm of their star player. What about you? What do you think?
Honestly, that's a great shout, man. And yes, Taysom Hill, I can see him wanting to maximize, a player with that kind of ability, dual threat, triple threat. I was going to ask you, is Kevin Cash going for it on every single fourth down, regardless of timing and situation? Or is he actually never going for it on fourth down, even when it's obvious?
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going for it on fourth down. I think he is like.
So he's going to coach the Packers then. We're just putting him in there. Give him a superstar quarterback, a clutch, Mr. Clutch, and then he'll just not go for him.
Oh, I love that. That is amazing. And I'm extremely thankful for Matt LaFleur's timidness, because it meant that Tom Brady solidifies the GOATness by winning another title. I don't know if they catch lightning in a bottle and like it turns out to be something different if they go for it and they have this opportunity. So thank you, Matt LaFleur. I think Tom Brady's sending you a ring in the mail, because you're just as important to that championship as the entire Tampa Bay Buccaneers team was. But I like that. That's a very interesting take. Kevin Cash, he's on my radar now of crossover coaches for the future.
That would be cool. I was thinking about Belichick, and maybe I think basketball, because if you think about like old school basketball, obviously Belichick's a super fundamentals guy. Yeah, I could see him. Really, it's either basketball or 5-a-side soccer. Okay, so something that he can really manipulate. I think with baseball, he wouldn't have enough control beyond the pitcher. He wouldn't be able to manipulate the game as much. Baseball is probably just too much to chance, right? I feel like he would want as much control as possible. So he would be coaching high school basketball with no shot clock, for one. It would be that type of situation, and he would just 5-a-side it to death. I feel like that would be Belichick.
I mean, so bringing your point, let's go baseball. He'd also be the coach that after like 2 years and like an off season of investigations would have found to have been taping from like the third deck at the Rogers Center, manipulating baseballs, corking everyone's bat, and having some sort of more elaborate, intricate system of what the Astros did with the banging of trash cans and their microphones. What do you think? What do you think Bill Belichick gets busted for in year 3 of his Major League Baseball campaign?
Oh, listening to you set this up, I was just thinking it would be great if Ian Rappaport was here and we were talking about this, and he's got this smirk on his face. And you're like, hey, were you with him when he found out about the Astros? Like, what do you think he thought about the Astros? Because for sure, he's sitting back in some like wooden room, right? And he's like in this massive old leather chair, and he's like just eating a bison burger or something. And he's got a glass of like super expensive whiskey, and he's just watching the news, and he's like, amateurs, trash cans, just amateurs, like just judging them, right?
Oh, that's amazing. Yes.
So, that is... as much as I would like to recklessly speculate about what Bill Belichick would do to cheat in another sport, I think it would be elaborate, and I think it would make the Astros look like absolute amateurs.
Oh, man. So I got to take this one step further.
Please.
bigger, more entertaining cheater, and I say this loving Bill Belichick. Is it Bill Belichick or is it Eddie Guerrero who just tells you if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying?
Honestly, it's Belichick.
Okay.
Belichick's the bigger cheater. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome. Now, Lee going to a quote and still pivoting on this whole television scene. Lee Iacocca once said, "In times of great stress or adversity, it's always best to keep busy, to plow your anger and your energy into something positive." For the most part of last year, the world was on shutdown, and movie theaters was one of the most affected businesses that we saw get shut down due to COVID-19. But this also allowed for amazing television to hit our screens. Has there been anything that comes out that really caught your eye, aside from Ted Lasso, that you are still loving, or were you more of a I gotta catch up or rewatch some of the things that I had already loved before the pandemic?
My wife watched The Office, and it was
First time ever?
First time ever.
I've still never seen it before.
Yeah, I highly recommend it, especially because it's digestible. I think all of us live busy lives, and we want to be entertained, and we can make time for. Some people make time, for a movie every day. I don't know if you ever listened to the Levitard show, and that they have David Sampson, the ex-president of the Marlins, on all the time, and he seems like a person who probably only needs to sleep 5 hours a day, but he is committed. Part of his daily routine is he consumes a new movie for research and entertainment purposes every single day. I don't know how he finds the time, but finding 22 minutes for a digestible sitcom, there's not much better than The Office, man. I think that the Office is incredible. And I was surprised, just kind of listening to her watch it, how much I remembered, how much I actually watched in college, because I never had a period where I was really into The Office. But then the later seasons, I hadn't seen it at all. And I was as captivated and as into it as she was. So I consumed The Office, I would say almost fully, 90% of it. I missed a couple of episodes per season, maybe. But Killing Eve with Sandra Oh,
Yep,
is exceptional. And that's a show that sports fans know from its presentation on TNT or during the NBA broadcast, which is nothing like the trailers that you see in the NBA.
Right.
For one, I thought it was an American show. It's not. It's a British show.
Right.
And I thought it was, a procedural type of drama. It is not. It is very much a dramedy. And it is, because it is English, it walks such a different line than any of the kind of casual, looser police style shows, this being like Secret Service type of espionage show, but it is exceptional. The acting is incredible. The woman that plays the villain, the second lead there, to Sandra Oh, is a Scouser, and you would never know from any of her scenes as this Russian multilingual spy. The writing is incredible, and I loved plowing through that. So I would highly recommend Killing Eve. If you've seen the trailers on TNT and thought not for me, give it a shot, because it's the writing and the acting is exceptional.
Now, so I'm gonna get back to you in a second. So start keeping in your mind top 5 shows of all time. When it comes to the pandemic, Cobra Kai I talked about earlier. Obviously, you have Ted Lasso, some of the greatest shows. I found myself really diving into shows that I'd either never seen or given up on and never finished. How I Met Your Mother. I finally got through that one. I found myself drawn to things that's not gonna make me think a whole lot. Yeah. And just sort of enjoy, outside of The Wire. The Wire I've seen maybe 6 times, but something hit different this year about the pandemic, where I'm just enjoying things and appreciating things a little bit more than maybe I had done previously. Scrubs, another one of my favorite TV shows. Zach Braff, amazing. But then I get back to a show that I'd never seen, and you being from Canada, you've seen them in Toronto before. I got into a show called Superstore. Okay. And in my mind, when I was hearing about the show, all I thought was like real Canadian Superstore, and how are you going to manage making a TV show about like a grocery store? And it is one of my favorite shows of watching in 2020. I just found it was really funny. It was really smart. It was very quick, short episodes that kept you sort of drawn in, and almost every cast member has something that you will always remember them by. Cool. And so if anybody hasn't seen Superstore, I recommend it. It's fun, it's light, but man, it will draw you in after like 6 episodes, and then you're stuck watching the next 6 seasons of it.
A lot of people have recommended Community after me saying I digested The Office. Everyone said, you got to do Community. And so I've watched it, but it hasn't bit yet. Maybe I need 6-7 episodes, like you said. It hasn't totally bit yet. But Superstore is the one with America Ferrera, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Right, okay. And she's also the star and I think a writer or EP of it. Like she's
yes.
It's her baby. So that's cool. I like it when I love hearing when, actors, and that's how we're introduced them as artists, become the complete artists and get to, act in their passion and create a passion project that just catches on so many levels. You can tell me just having not really digested a full episode. I've definitely seen pieces of it. You can tell that it's one of those shows that must be so fun to work on, that everyone that I see on the screen truly enjoys being a part of it. And I think those are the shows that really, kind of transcend the screen, right? And break through the fourth wall without traditionally doing that in a lot of ways.
Right.
So yeah, I will drop another one if you're looking for short digestible comedies. And a lot of people might be surprised if it's not their genre, not their time. But the Jan Arden show, is very, very entertaining and very funny. Jan is a hilarious person, and it really comes through in this sitcom, which is an exaggeration of her life, present day. So it's a very cool show.
Jan Arden, yeah, I've seen commercials. It's never been something where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna dive into it because there's so much stuff to digest.
So much out there.
On your recommendation, I will make it a goal to at least give season one a shot. If you give Community an entire season to win your heart, because I will tell you,
it's worth it.
Donald Glover, Danny Pudi, all the Allison Brie is in it. It is Joel McHale. It is phenomenal show. It gets really cool, and then you have obviously Chevy Chase is in it. He's kind of interesting depending on if you like Chevy Chase, but it is a fun show. It doesn't take itself seriously, and it talks about a lot of fun, interesting topics in a comedic way. So I definitely recommend Community for sure. But this takes me to now top 5 shows, favorite all time. If you were on a desert island, what 5 shows are you taking with you?
Yeah, I feel bad because I don't know if I would actually choose 5. I feel like I would pick 3. And to be honest, one of them, if I was to stretch it to 5, and I haven't really thought of this question, so to be honest, I would, even in 3, I'm probably squeezing in one of the All or Nothings.
Okay.
The documentary series. A lot of people have got into the Formula One Drive to Survive on Netflix as well. On Prime, I feel like a lot of people a lot fewer people have digested All or Nothing, but that crew does, and it's the HBO 24/7 style. That's what invented it. But there's a distinct quality to the brand of All or Nothing, which is just different than all the other kind of copycats out there. The Man City one to me is absolutely exceptional. And a lot of people say, well, they're putting it on for the camera, and they just did the one with Tottenham, and Jose knows the camera's there. Is Jose Mourinho really Jose Mourinho? I mean, he always knows the camera's there anyway. So I think that there's football people and non-football people who felt a lack of authenticity, but I just think in general, it's a revealing. They peel back the curtain in ways that you just don't see at that level. And I do think that there's a bit more authenticity than our, doubtful minds may want to see that or may believe. So I just think that All or Nothing kind of captures it in a different way that some of the other ones, haven't been able to do. So the one on Brazil was really exciting. I've yet to watch the one on the New Zealand All Black rugby team, but I love the Man City doc, and the Spurs one I really enjoyed as well. I waited to digest the Spurs one, but I'm really glad that I did. And my Jose Mourinho impression it's not as good as it used to be, but after watching that series, I feel like that's something I got to bring back. I think I got to put some time in and work on my complaining.
Jose,
the older Jose's got, the more he started to sound like my Portuguese grandfather, and it's like this 65-year-old voice. It's this fixated voice from when I would have been 10 years old in my head. That's now Jose has become that man.
Huh. Interesting. All right. I like that.
I will give you one sitcom answer though, because if I'm only going with 3, Fawlty Towers with John Cleese. It's the best sitcom of all time. Have you seen it?
I have seen it.
Yes. You're you live a better life because you've seen this show.
Shout out to my grade 8 core teacher who made us watch Faulty Towers, because he was like the intellectual type, and he was like, you have to watch this. He had a very dry sense of humor, so that was like his thing. We'd finish our work, we'd all score really well on a test, and it meant episode of Faulty Towers that week. Amazing. So I give him all of the credit for what he did to our young minds.
Yeah, honestly, man, Faulty Towers. My dad lived in England in the 70s, and he went to race car driver school for a few years. So a lot of my affinity towards England comes from my dad, and my love of soccer comes from him as well. His time over there, he didn't have a club, but he loved the game. He introduced me to it, and eventually, once we had the access to, in Toronto, it's the 10:00 kickoffs. It was '98 when Jerry Dobson and Craig Forrest. Although Craig may have still been playing at the time, maybe he wasn't a part of the full broadcast at that point, but that was a lot of Canadians' introduction to live and regular Premier League. That's how I fell in love with Aston Villa, and I think that moment in time really kind of sparked a new growth for soccer. So I know I'm kind of all over the place there, but I just started thinking about Faulty Towers, having watched Faulty Towers kind of probably around that same period. That was my introduction to that. And if it's one of those things, if I come across it, I've seen every episode 20 times, and I would, if it was on television, I would absolutely stop and watch it to the end, and then I would go and watch the next episode online.
Right. Yeah, fair. Yeah, you're searching out to find it because now it's in your mind. It's like, I got to keep going. I need another one. It's just amazing.
So yes, for anybody out there that's looking for something new, something different, short and digestible, something quirky. You've liked Ted Lasso, and like this is old. It's 70s. It's Jason Sudeikis is not there, and you will not recognize John Cleese, but it is well worth your time. It is exceptional.
So I know we're pressing up against time a little bit, but I do want to ask you two more things.
Take your time, man. Please.
Beautiful.
Shoot.
So in May, there's an autobiography called My Life, written by Dwayne De Rosario and yourself, with a foreword by the Canadian icon Lennox Lewis. How did this come to be, and what was it like working with the original icon, 4-time MLS Cup champion, Dwayne De Rosario?
Yeah, it was a dream come true, man. Even just to hear you say that and kind of read that out, it feels absolutely surreal. But it was books are a marathon, and so it was a project that was started shortly after he'd retired, maybe about a year after. We connected through a mutual friend, and I'd known him kind of from working in the media, but I think it was the mutual friend that had secured let's sit down and let's give this a shot. So we would meet for an hour at a time, about 15 times over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. And then it was about a 3-4 year project to finish the book, but to really, encapsulate his entire life and his career, and for him to kind of relive a lot of moments in his childhood and see how that's kind of shaped him in fatherhood now post career, I think was a really interesting experience for him, and something that he's spoken about, something that he hadn't really maybe not given as much thought to, but the book project had made him think differently about some things in his life, and I think that really comes through in the book, which is cool, and was really exciting to kind of be a part of and help kind of bring that story out with a different lens and kind of a different voice, not my voice as much as just kind of the time.
Right.
Dwayne is encapsulating a part of his life, a few years removed from it now. So I think that he looks at it in kind of a different, more illuminating way in some cases, and some of the stories are just wild. It's I think a lot of people will be surprised with some of the things that they didn't know behind the scenes, and he gets into some cool moments and some controversial moments that people would really love to hear kind of both sides of the story too. So I'm really excited for May to have it drop so people can pick it up and read it, because there's some really cool stuff in there.
Dwayne De Rosario, first bobblehead that I ever received. I never bought one, but it was the first bobblehead I ever received. It's actually still in my old room at my mom's house.
Yes.
Collecting dust, I am sure, but it is there. I will always hold on to that one, never giving it away.
Is it TFC? He's got the TFC shirt and braids?
Yes, he's got the TFC shirt and the braids, yeah. And so, you talked about it, you're excited. What we're actually going to do is, if listeners want to get a copy of My Life, it is available for pre-order now wherever you get your books. We're going to be giving a copy away to one lucky follower of the podcast. We'll have more details of the contest to follow, so be sure to check out the Big O Podcast on social media, all of the pages for your chance to win, because you know what? we got to support the icons. And, if we get the stamp of approval from you saying that people are going to love it, well then, hey, you know what? Let's get one person out there, one extra person. I'm going to fit the bill. We might even give away 2. Who knows? We're going to see how this goes. But I know I'll be picking up one for myself because I love Canadian stories. I think, I had Donovan Bailey on not a few episodes ago, and he put Canada on the map when it came to attitude, when it came to sticking up and no longer being little brother to the United States or on a global scale. And he had the attitude, he had the swagger, he had the cockiness, but he backed it up. And I feel like more often than not, sometimes Canadian athletes get forgotten or they get looked down on. But when we got guys like Davies killing it over in Germany, people are starting to recognize Canada as the powerhouse of all sports, not just hockey. What do you think about, the Canadian athletes starting to perform on such a global level?
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible. And you look at, I think internationally we are perceived as just producing hockey players and just being, good at men's and women's ice hockey. And that's absolutely not the case. And you look at specifically in the last 5 years, this new generation of young elite talent across all sports, from Bianca Andreescu, obviously Alphonso Davies, in the NBA, RJ Barrett, Jamal Murray, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. It's exceptional that you have kind of so many elite young Canadians across all sports, and really for soccer, with the World Cup coming in 2026, to have Alphonso Davies, to me, of all the incredible things that happened in the last year. And really, the pandemic is such an interesting moment because to a lot of people, just before the shutdown, I think it was the 8th of March, if I'm not mistaken, Chelsea, Bayern Munich in London, that was the introduction of Alphonso Davies to the world, at least to England, which in a lot of ways sometimes is the introduction to world football, via beating up a Premier League team. And to think, the heights and the elevation that the acceleration, I guess, of his superstardom in Project Restart, to then schooling Nelson Semedo and throttling Barcelona as Bayern Munich did, to winning the Champions League. To me, the real, oh my God moment, like this is exceptional, was him being named to the best 11.
Yeah.
It was him being in this short period being crowned, and justifiably so, the best left back in the world. And to see him on that fifth pro map with the 10 other, immediately recognizable global superstars, that was the greatest, like, wow, man, that's a Canadian doing exceptional things, and moment for me. So that was great.
I loved everything you just said, except for you having to bring up the fact that my Chelsea team got dismantled by Byron. It was ugly. So thank you for bringing that up. The only thing that I'll take solace in is that we will likely hold on to the final spot for Champions League qualifying, and Liverpool won't. So for all my Liverpool fans, sorry, not sorry. That's just the way it's going to happen.
I thought you were going to come back immediately with something about 2004 in Greece. Or like, let me just finish this gyro right now while we finish this podcast. You go ahead and talk about the book Dunlop for a minute, but I'm going to eat this gyro as I think about 2004.
I have family from Spain, so Spain's always my country of choice to cheer from. And for the longest time, Spain and Portugal were the same thing. They were always great teams that could never break through. But then when they broke through, they just never let up. Yeah. And I feel like Portugal is sort of in that realm right now, where you can easily see them take home, the next 2 trophies, whether it's World Cup or Euro Cup, and you wouldn't blink an eye. And then when Ronaldo hangs it up, then it'll be time for another, person to take over the mantle. You might be a little bit biased when I ask you this, but this will be the last question for the podcast. Messi, Ronaldo, what's your argument for who the best soccer player is?
I am definitely a little biased. I have always been on Team Ronaldo, but I think, to me, and I absolutely respect Messi's greatness. He's exceptional. He is not, as some ex-Sportsnet personality called, a fraud. Not at all. However, I do agree with some of the points that, because he wasn't able to, the faults against Messi really are internationally, and it's unfair to put that all on him. But to me, that's kind of the difference. And you look at 2016 in the final in particular, Ronaldo didn't have a great tournament overall, and in the end, they won without him on the pitch for 70 minutes or whatever it was into extra time. You think I would know because I was there more than 7 minutes, but thank God for a dare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To me, I just think that Ronaldo is so much more dynamic, and I think that Messi hasn't. And it's not fair to say this is a knock, but Messi hasn't had to evolve his game in order to stay elite, whereas Ronaldo, whether forced or not, absolutely has. And I think that that's it's more remarkable to me that Ronaldo is, still the best 1-2 players in the world at 36, now playing as a center forward, and as relied upon as a goal scorer. That he became the goal scorer that Messi kind of always was. I think Messi evolved into a better goal scorer, but he was always going to be someone who created and then was able to score goals. And Ronaldo evolved into an elite, deadly finisher that I don't think was necessarily his projection at Manchester United. So it's the evolution for me, the dynamism that makes Ronaldo better. It truly isn't internationally and the silverware in the cabinet, but that has to play a factor. I think you'd be foolish not to. And the fact that Messi got to a World Cup final, in Brazil, to have won it there, I think would have cemented his legacy as, at least in this period, being better than Ronaldo, and that didn't happen. So we're still having this open debate, this open conversation.
LeBron James, Cristiano Ronaldo, Tom Brady. I am not yet in that age bracket, but I have faith that if they can do it, I might have a fraction of that, but I'll be okay, even if it's just a fraction, because what they're doing plus 35 years old is simply remarkable, and none of them really are showing signs of slowing down, which might be the greatest post 35-year-old crop of athletes in a single generation that we may ever get again. It's a remarkable time for sports. What out of any other sport, obviously Ronaldo's your guy. Who is if you had to pick like a Mount Rushmore of GOATs, four best athletes of any sport, your choice, who's on that mountain face?
So you may think that I'm biased, but to me, Miguel Cabrera would be on there, because I think just as a hitter, and I remember having a conversation with true baseball people who had said in their mind he is the best hitter of all time, and that floored me, because I felt like I was biased in saying, I guess I didn't trust myself in saying that he was the best hitter at that moment in 2012, 2013, and they were saying without a doubt the best hitter of all time. So I just think it's unfortunate that he's not going to have the World Series ring or another World Series ring to show for it in the end, most likely. But I think that what he accomplished in that Triple Crown kind of period, in that window where they were contending, was just unbelievable. Lewis Hamilton is also on that list, because I think that Lewis Hamilton would not have won 7 world titles racing cars, the Senna era cars from the early 90s, but he still would have won world titles. I think that he is such an incredible driver. He benefits from having the best car ever, but he really is an exceptional driver that he would have won in those other eras. And I think it's always difficult to compare different eras, of course. I think there are some players, though, where you can say they would have been okay. I love the Bill Russell argument. There are some people that think that Bill Russell would be totally useless today. And I don't think that that's true. I think that he would evolve his game in order to be dominant in this time period. And I think that having had to fight the car in the way that Ayrton Senna and these previous drivers did, that's something that Lewis Hamilton hasn't had to do, but I truly believe he could have done it, and he could have done it well. So he would be up there. I got to put Ronaldo up there. It's also a great looking Mount Rushmore for Ronaldo up there. There was a time when we used to have the same haircut, him and I. Quite a few haircuts, actually. There was a long time where I always had a Ronaldo haircut. It was just
fair enough.
I go in the barber's chair. I go to
give me the Ronaldo.
Give me the Ronaldo. And they knew. Yeah, I rocked a Euro mullet for a long time, bro. It was there was a good 3-year window there where I was rocking the Ronaldo Euro mullet. So I got three legends there. You say I need a fourth. It's got to be Gretzky, man. It's got to be Wayne Gretzky would be the fourth, I think. And this is crazy because I've left out Jordan here, and to me, I forget what podcast I was on, or when this was, but someone asked me like, when you were a kid, who was your first superhero? And
Right.
it was Michael Jordan. It wasn't
Right.
some cartoon. It was absolutely Michael Jordan. That to me was, he was a real life superhero, and is one of the reasons why I think I fell in love with sports, and not just baseball, not not just soccer, but sports as a whole. He really transcended it, and just he was must watch. Any highlight, any game that you had access to, like, to me, you had to watch Michael Jordan. There are other guys who have captured that in moments, but he was just unbelievable. So can I have 5? Because now I
Sure.
need to put MJ there. So
Sure.
okay, Gretzky and MJ, and now we've got 5. I'll leave it at that.
This might be the only time Michael Jordan is considered an honorable mention in like anything, which
Well,
is
it was-
like crazy.
It shouldn't have been an honorable mention. It was my own forgetfulness in the moment. I think it was it's almost as if I took him for granted. Like, of course he's
Right.
already there, and then I realized I ran out of spaces. So we've built another space, and he's there.
Outside of MJ, your first 4, I would say, are like also like all team like dime pieces as
Right.
well. I mean, like you said it, probably the most handsome group of athletes to ever be on a Mount Rushmore, and I think that's getting a lot of attention. You could charge admission to take a picture by that bad boy, as long as it's not the sculptor who did the initial Ronaldo piece. We don't want that guy. We want the guy who's going to do like David Beckham or something.
The final piece, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Not the James Corden one. Where,
No.
Not that David Beckham statue, which was a hilarious skit, and what a great prank, by the way. I love Beckham's reaction there throughout. That was great. So yeah, you're right. It's a great looking Mount Rushmore. I will say, for time period though, like you got to go bald Jordan. Can't give him 80s Jordan with hair. But Gretz has to have the 80s flow. It's got to be before the cut, before the trade. No mullet. It's got to be proper. Probably his second Stanley Cup, mid 80s Gretzky flow. So young face. He's got thin chiseled features. It's 80s Gretzky. That's the one. And then you can just take any Ronaldo.
He was like Hollywood in Edmonton more so than he was Hollywood when he actually moved to when he got traded to LA.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. He was more model in Canada than they tried to get that image out of him in LA, and it just didn't flow the same way as the homegrown Edmonton style.
Funny, eh? Funny how that works. Yeah. I haven't thought about that in a while.
Listen, Brendan, you have been an amazing guest. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. If people want to follow you on Instagram, follow your journey on Twitter, where can they find you?
I'm also trying the TikTok scene. I'm trying to take sports TikTok to a new level, man. So I am Brendan _Dunlop on all platforms. That includes Clubhouse. I'm very happy that no one's come in there and try and cop that before me. So yeah, Brendan _Dunlop on all platforms. And I appreciate the plug for the book, man. Yeah, Derail My Life, the autobiography of Dwayne De Rosario, comes out in May. And thank you very much for giving away a copy there. And I'll let's connect, man, and we'll have Dwayne sign it. We'll get you a couple of signed copies for your listeners. We'd love to do that and make that happen.
Incredible. Shout out to Clubhouse. They're actually the ones who got this together. We were in a room together. Your name popped up, and I was like, yes, got to get him on the podcast.
Oh, amazing. Oh, I didn't realize that.
It was when Cabby, Tim, and Dee all got together for their sort of sports chat for creators, and you popped in there, and I was like, you know what? Brendan Dunlop. That's
awesome,
my guy.
Bro.
Let's
hunt
him down on social media. So
Thank
I appreciate
you for messaging, man. And good on you, bro. And hey, congrats on all your success, man. I have Donovan Bailey and Ian Rappaport in a pandemic, to be doing this from home and be able to do this at a high quality level and carry a great high quality conversation, man. I feel like we've been talking for 10 minutes. Like, it's flown by. This was great.
Can't believe it's been just over an hour, which has been crazy. If you want to listen to the Big O Podcast, check out this episode and all previous episodes available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, with video copies available on YouTube. For my guest, Brendan Dunlop, I'm your host, Julian Ortiz. Thank you for watching and listening. Have a great night, everybody.